To anyone that uses Antennae, which is all of you, and anyone that uses the Antennae talent, which is none of you, you will know that the properties of Antennae didn't matter. All of the monsters would just come towards you, regardless if you were wearing it or not. It also doesn't matter if another player was in your vicinity but not right next to you. They would still target you, and they would still move. So you could lure a giant horde of flies, in my case, no longer use Antennae, and they would still target you and move, meaning you would still obtain all of the loot. Also meaning that the monsters would not stall or freeze if they were not in view range. It's a simple change, one you wouldn't really think about until you actually do have to think about it. Overall, I think it's a debuff, but it could be a buff depending on how you use Antennae. In almost every scenario it is needed, however, there are certain areas where it's not needed, and if your squad isn't strong enough, or if you're not strong enough, Antennae can be the death of you. You take the Fire and Hell for example. The last chamber is surefire death if you use Antennae, especially Super. You can use the lower rarity versions, and it's one of the places where you could use the lower rarity versions if needed. Something which wasn't even a factor before. However, you could use it in order to lure more monsters, as you would load all of the monsters on screen, assuming no one else uses it when you do. And oh boy, players sure love to use Antennae when you least expect it, especially if they are not in your squad. Now, how would you control the use of this, and how would you control all the monsters on your screen? Well, again, using a lower rarity Antennae does help. You can essentially create your own wave if you do this properly. And you can help this by using it sporadically, not permanently, and some higher end zones are the perfect example. This feature can be annoying if you are swiftly moving across a higher end area, because there is a point where you can unload these monsters. You can then go back, and some of them that targeted you before, that you unloaded in the game, can be reloaded and still target you. And to prevent this, you simply go into an area where they will not follow you, as well as using Antennae. That's one problem solved. Now, if you like playing solo like myself, a lot of these tricks may help you. However, if you are in a squad, this information may not be needed, unless you are all somehow 4 solo players in one squad. Just know that if you can bubble far enough without Antennae equipped, any of the monsters that did target you will be unloaded and will not continue moving forward, which is certainly great for those like Hornet and Mantis and Wasp, or any monster with a projectile. If you do not use the Antennae for too long, you will have an issue with a lot of them being pushed. What do I mean by this? Well, simply put, if you do not use it for a long period of time, and a lot of monsters have spawned, they will be pushed towards you, and if you do not have enough space, you can be overwhelmed very quickly. What would this really look like? Here is what it would look like. Bubbles and sponges take a lot of space here, so a lot of the smaller ones would be pushed much faster and much closer to you, and if you do not have the tools, like a bunch of eggs, you are going to struggle and probably die. Now, during supers, would this really matter? No, because there are always players that like to use Antennae regardless of the consequences. This is a horrifying visual. Players will always rush at a super, so good luck trying to get everyone to coordinate properly. Even when it looks like they're coordinating properly, it's just not going to happen, and Antennae is going to be used whether you like it or not. Stalling is also a thing, and this can prevent your squad from being overwhelmed. And if you can prevent your squad from being overwhelmed, that's a good thing. You cannot equip Antennae for long enough, and then you can equip it again. All the monsters that you lured, assuming no one else is using Antennae, will be reloaded and they will move towards you again. Again, it's like creating your own wave. And many of us know how many players loved the original waves. One final demonstration that I will show you regarding the Antennae in its current format, since you know I have all the Antennae variants, including Mecha Antennae, except for Unique. but you don't need a unique antennae to know how it functions. I will equip every single antennae one by one from closest to furthest vision. I cleared this entire field of vision for this very purpose, and you will see very soon how much of a difference it makes. The lower rarity antennae don't make much of a difference. It's when you reach the higher versions, usually starting with mythic antennae, not mecha antennae, although sometimes it is a big difference, especially considering the leap from legendary to mythic. You will finally understand that there is a use to lower rarity antennae, but only in certain situations. And as we reach ultra antennae, that extra 55% leap in vision, oh, you know it makes a difference, alright? And this is the best way to know when the monsters will be loaded in. And assuming you want to get to the higher end areas, in most areas this is useful. However, this kind of knowledge mainly applies if you're reaching the ultra zones, or trying to reach the ultra zones. As you might think, super mecha antennae and super antennae don't make much of a difference. Oh, it does. At least it does in the fire antel, where the soldier fire ants have a huge range where they can target you. It's mainly used in areas that have monsters that can target you from a absurd range away, and soldier fire ant is one of them. I do not know if the knowledge of antennae will be useful to anyone, and the antennae properties may change again over time, but for many of you that do not know about antennae and how it works, outside of just the obvious field of vision, this may or may not help you. You can call it a nerf, you can call it a buff, it just depends on how you use it, so use it wisely.